The stars were quiet. Space was cold, silent, and endless. But something was coming. Something dangerous. Far from Earth, in a deep corner of the galaxy, a massive alien fleet began to move. The ships were huge, black, and sharp like knives. These were not peaceful travelers. They were the Karnak, a war-loving alien race. The Karnak had watched humans for years. They saw Earth's small ships, weak weapons, and old technology. To them, humans were nothing, just a primitive race playing with fire. So they made a choice. They would conquer Earth. The Karnak leader, Commander Virek, sent a message across the galaxy. It was short and cold. Humans, you are weak. You have no place in the stars. We are coming. Surrender or be destroyed. When the message reached Earth, people were shocked. World leaders gathered in panic. Presidents, generals, and scientists sat in dark rooms, looking at the screen. The enemy fleet was massive. Over 300 warships were flying toward Earth. Each one was stronger than any ship humans had ever built. They had weapons that could melt cities, shields that could block any attack. Earth was not ready. Some wanted to surrender. Others wanted to hide. But one woman stood up and said just 3 words. Send the Valkyrie. Her name was Captain Rhea Morgan, a former starfighter pilot. Calm, smart, and brave. She wasn't like the other leaders. She didn't speak with fear. She didn't flinch. She knew about the Karnak. She also knew something they didn't. Valkyrie. It wasn't just a ship. It was the most advanced warship ever built by humans, secretly made in a hidden space station deep beyond Mars. Few people knew it even existed. It was faster, stronger, and smarter than anything else in space. And it had only one crew member, Captain Morgan. The order was given. People watched as the Valkyrie launched into space, its silver wings glowing under the sun. It didn't fly with a fleet. It didn't carry an army. Just one ship, heading straight into the path of an alien armada. The news spread fast. Across Earth, people stopped what they were doing. They stared at their screens. One human ship was going to fight 300 alien warships. It's suicide, said one general. It's madness, said a scientist. It's the only chance we have, said Captain Morgan. Inside the Valkyrie, the ship was alive with light and sound. A calm voice spoke through the speakers. Hello, Captain. All systems ready. Weapons charged. Shields at full power. That voice belonged to Athena, the ship's eye. She was more than a computer. She was a mind. Sharp, fast, and connected directly to Captain Morgan's brain. Together, they were like one being. As the ship raced through space, Captain Morgan looked at the incoming data. The Karnak fleet was still far, but closing fast. They would reach Earth in 3 days. She had to meet them before that. She sat in the pilot chair, eyes calm, hands steady. She wasn't afraid, not even a little, because fear was for the enemy. Meanwhile, on the Karnak command ship, Commander Virek watched the human ship on his screen. One small dot in the black sky. He laughed. Is this a joke? He growled. They send only one. His officers laughed with him. They thought it would be easy, a warm-up before the real battle. But deep in space, the Valkyrie kept flying, faster and faster. Stars blurred around it. The engines hummed like thunder, and Captain Morgan whispered to herself, "Let them laugh." She remembered Earth, the green forests, the blue oceans, the children playing in the sunlight. She remembered everything she was fighting for. This wasn't just a mission. It was a message. To the Karnak, to the galaxy, to everyone watching. Humanity will not kneel. Humanity will not run. And one ship is enough. The war had begun, but it would not go the way that Karnak expected. The alien ships moved like a black storm through space. Cold, silent, unstoppable. Hundreds of them, each one the size of a city block, glowing with red light and humming with deadly energy. They were getting closer to Earth with every hour, but one ship was already waiting. Valkyrie floated alone in the dark, still as a shadow. From a distance, it looked small, too small to fight anything. The Tarnak scouts laughed when they saw it on their scanners. Just one. A Xarnok pilot said, "Is this the human defense force?" They weren't worried. They didn't slow down. They charged forward, full speed, ready to crush the tiny human ship like a bug. Inside Valkyrie, Captain Rhea Morgan sat quietly. Her hands rested on the control panel, her eyes fixed on the glowing data screens. She watched the Tarnak ships approach, 20 of them in a tight formation. Fast, aggressive, confident. Athena, the ship's AI, spoke softly in her ear. Targeting systems locked. Enemy ships within attack range. Recommend action. Captain Morgan didn't answer right away. She leaned back in her seat, thinking. The enemy didn't understand. They thought she was just one human in a small ship. They didn't know what Valkyrie really was. They didn't know what it could do. That was about to change. She pressed one button. Valkyrie's engines came to life, burning blue. The ship vanished from its spot, moving so fast it seemed to disappear. The Xarnok scanners lost track of it. Where did it go? One pilot shouted. Before they could react, Valkyrie reappeared behind them, without making a sound. Then came the attack. With one quiet flash, a single beam of pure white energy tore through the black space. Boom! 3 Xarnok ships exploded in a chain reaction. No warning, no escape, just light, fire, and silence. Panic hit the alien squad. "It's behind us," another pilot screamed. They turned to fire back, but Valkyrie was already gone again, faster than light, slipping through space like a shadow. One by one, the ships began to fall. Explosions lit up the darkness. The Xarnok pilots shouted commands, but nothing worked. Their weapons couldn't lock onto the target. Their shields were useless. Their fleet formation shattered. Captain Morgan stayed calm the whole time. "Athene," she said, "Pattern Omega. Use the edge drift." "Confirmed," the eye replied. Valkyrie tilted slightly. Space bent around the ship. Time twisted. To the Xarnok, it seemed like Valkyrie was appearing in multiple places at once. On the left, then the right, then above them. Boom, boom, boom. 5 more ships gone. Commander Vurick watched the battle from the bridge of his massive flagship. His smile was gone. His hands were clenched. His officers looked nervous. "How is one ship doing this?" he growled. "How?" He ordered more ships to join the fight. 50 more, pulled from the main fleet. They would crush this ghost. But deep inside Valkyrie, Captain Morgan smiled for the first time. "They're scared," she said. "Yes," Athene replied. Panic levels increasing across the enemy fleet. Confidence dropping by 83%. The captain nodded. She could feel it too. The shift. The Xarnok had come expecting an easy war, but now they were losing. Fast. Not to an army. Not to a fleet. Just to her. She looked at the monitor again. More ships were coming. It didn't matter. She wasn't done yet. Valkyrie powered up its next weapon. Something that Xarnok had never seen before. A neutrino wave cannon designed to phase through energy shields and target the core of enemy ships. "Fire on my mark," Captain Morgan said. She waited. Watched. Mark. A blue pulse burst from Valkyrie's front cannon. It didn't look like much, just a quiet flicker of light. But when it hit, 6 Xarnok ships stopped moving. Completely. No smoke. No fire. Just stillness. Then, seconds later, they shattered into a million pieces, like glass dropped from the sky. The rest of the Xarnok fleet stopped. Not because they were ordered to, but because they were afraid. They had never seen a ship like this. They had never seen a human fight like this. They didn't know what to do next. Back on the flagship, Commander Virik roared with rage. He smashed his hand against the control panel. Pull back. Regroup. Find its weakness. But there was no weakness, not that they could find. Captain Morgan leaned forward in her seat, speaking into the comms for the first time since the battle started. Sarnak fleet, this is your only warning. Turn around. Go home. Or be destroyed. Silence followed. No reply. But she knew they heard her. And she knew they were listening now. The storm had come, but Valkyrie wasn't running from it. She was the storm. And this was just the beginning. The battle raged on, but something had changed in the cold void of space. The Sarnak fleet, once so sure of its power, now hesitated. Each time they fired, they missed. Each time they tried to regroup, Valkyrie was already there somewhere else. It was like hunting a shadow in the dark, impossible and maddening. Captain Morgan watched the chaos unfold on the screen, her mind calm as the universe around her shook. The Sarnak had sent out more ships. Dozens of them now swarmed, hoping to trap the Valkyrie. It should have been enough. Hundreds of alien warships should have overwhelmed one human vessel. But the Valkyrie wasn't just a ship. It was a game changer. Athena's voice filled her ears, breaking the silence. Enemy fleet formation shifting. Attempting to trap us in a crossfire. Target coordinates locked. Captain Morgan pressed a few buttons, adjusting the controls, her eyes narrowing as she scanned the rapidly changing situation. She could feel the heat of the battle, but there was no panic in her. She had been trained for moments like this, and now it was time to use every trick she had. Let them try, she muttered under her breath. Her voice was low but steady. Athena, let's give them a show. With a single command, Valkyrie shifted direction and shot straight towards the center of the Sarnak fleet. The alien ships were closing in on all sides, a tight formation meant to trap the small human ship. As they fired, the blasts came fast and furious, but Valkyrie danced between them, moving at speeds that defied logic. The Sarnak ships struggled to track her, unable to match her agility. The humans had underestimated one thing: humans could think. Valkyrie wasn't just a ship of metal and wires. It was a living, breathing entity, made to think, adapt, and survive. It was alive in ways the Sarnak could never understand. Target locked, Athena said, her voice a whisper of calculation. Captain Morgan's fingers flew over the controls. Now, a brilliant flash of blue light erupted from the ship's main cannon. The beam streaked through space, cutting through two Sarnak vessels in an instant. It wasn't a huge explosion, just a quiet and deadly wave of energy that turned the alien ships to dust. The remaining Sarnak ships, already disoriented from Valkyrie's unpredictable movements, scrambled to adjust. But it was too late. Switch to evasive maneuvers, Captain Morgan ordered, already anticipating their next move. Valkyrie zipped through the formation, dodging another wave of attacks. The enemy was falling apart. As their once proud fleet scattered, they began to realize that they were not just fighting a ship, they were fighting human ingenuity. A sudden transmission cut through the noise of the battle. It was a message from one of the remaining Sarnak commanders. This is your last warning, human. Surrender now, or we will destroy you. Captain Morgan didn't even flinch. She leaned forward, her hands steady on the controls. Tell them what we think of their warning, Athena, she said calmly. Athena responded with a cold, precise tone. Message sent. We do not surrender, and we will never bow to threats. The Valkyrie's engines roared as they pushed forward, rocketing through the darkness like a comet on fire. The Sarnak had underestimated the one thing they could never predict: human will. The Sarnak commander barked out orders. More ships were being deployed. The remainder of the fleet wasn't ready to retreat yet. They had one final play: the stealth ships, silent and deadly, designed to hide in the vastness of space, invisible to normal sensors. These ships would be their secret weapon, their last hope. Captain Morgan knew this. She had seen them on the radar. Athene, track them, she said with a smile. Let's see how well their stealth works now. The AI hummed, its calculations sharp. Stealth ships detected. Estimated time of arrival, 5 minutes. Captain Morgan's smile grew. This was exactly what she had been waiting for. She had already anticipated this move. As soon as she saw the Xarnock fleet begin to scatter, she had activated the gravitational wave disruptors, hidden deep inside Valkyrie's hull. These disruptors could pull apart the stealth technology that Xarnock ships used. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. A new wave of energy shot out from the Valkyrie. It spread like an invisible web, distorting the space around the stealth ships. One by one, they blinked into visibility, like ghosts caught in a trap. The Xarnock commanders cursed. They had no idea how the human ship had known their move. Before the stealth ships could even react, Valkyrie fired again. One shot. One kill. The first stealth ship exploded, its energy shields crackling before collapsing in a fiery blast. The rest of the ships, still trying to activate their weapons, were quickly destroyed. This was not the war they had expected. The Xarnock had thought they were the conquerors. But it wasn't the Xarnock who were in control anymore. It was humanity. Commander Virek, now visibly sweating with anger, slammed his fist against the armrest of his throne. He looked out into space, watching the wreckage of his fleet floating in the darkness. The Xarnock were starting to realize that they had no chance. Against this one human ship, all their firepower, all their might, it meant nothing. Captain Morgan's voice came through the comms again, cold and calm. Your war is over. Go home. The battle was far from finished, but the message was clear. Valkyrie had already done what the Xarnock had believed was impossible. It had turned the tide. It had made them question everything. The war wasn't just about guns and missiles. It was about what humans could do when they fought back. And humanity was winning. The silence in space was deafening. All that could be heard inside Valkyrie was the steady hum of the ship's engines and the soft click of Captain Morgan's fingers against the controls. The Xarnock fleet was in disarray, broken apart by a single ship. The once mighty warships that had marched toward Earth now drifted in space like abandoned shells, their once glowing lights flickering dimly. But Captain Morgan wasn't done. The battle had shifted, but it wasn't over. Not yet. The remaining Xarnock ships, those that had managed to escape the initial attack, were regrouping. They were gathering for one final push, ready to face the Valkyrie head-on. They had no choice. A voice crackled in her ear. Captain, the enemy is pulling back and forming a new formation. They're about to charge. She didn't need ATGENA to tell her that. She could feel the shift in the air, the rising tension as the Xarnock made their final desperate attempt. They knew they had only one chance left. Valkyrie, however, wasn't just any ship. It was a weapon, and Captain Morgan was its weapons master. I see them, she said, eyes scanning the screens. Athena, prep the neutron blast. Get ready to overload the shields. Understood, Captain. Neutron blast charged to 95%. Shields at 120%. Full power in 30 seconds. It wasn't just firepower that made Valkyrie so deadly. It was her speed and precision. The Valkyrie was more than a ship. It was a racer, a hunter. The Xarnock fleet came at her in a wall of destruction, but Valkyrie was already moving. She wasn't waiting for them to come closer. She was going straight for them. The alien ships fired first, blasts of energy that would have torn apart any regular ship in seconds. But Valkyrie was no ordinary ship. Captain Morgan banked hard to the left, dodging a massive energy beam by mere inches. The ship moved like a living thing, its engines thrumming with raw power. Every movement was calculated, every twist and turn designed to avoid damage, while positioning herself perfectly to strike. The Xarnock fired again, but Valkyrie was already gone. Captain Morgan adjusted the controls, and Valkyrie was in front of the enemy, cutting through the wall of ships like a blade through paper. The first shot from the neutron cannon hit its target, the lead Xarnock vessel. The impact was silent, but the result was devastating. The alien ship's hull buckled under the pressure, its engines igniting in a brilliant explosion that sent shockwaves rippling through space. Without missing a beat, Valkyrie fired again. Then again, taking down 2 more ships with precision strikes. But there were still dozens left. "Athena, full thrust," Captain Morgan ordered. "We're pushing them back, but we need more firepower. Let's finish this." The AI responded instantly, locking onto the next group of enemy ships. They were fast, but Valkyrie was faster. As Valkyrie surged forward, Captain Morgan's heart rate stayed steady. She wasn't just a pilot anymore. She was a leader, a force. The Karnak had made a mistake in underestimating humanity, and now they were going to pay the price. The remaining Karnak ships attempted to regroup, forming a last-ditch defense. But Valkyrie's sensors had already predicted their movements. Captain Morgan's fingers moved with lightning speed across the controls, activating the gravitational disruptors once again. The Karnak fleet froze for a moment, unable to make their ships move. Their engines faltered. Their weapons malfunctioned. In the chaos, Valkyrie struck again. This time, a devastating full barrage of torpedoes, each one hitting its target with deadly accuracy. A massive explosion lit up the dark void of space as 5 more Karnak ships were obliterated in a single moment. The fleet was breaking apart, piece by piece, like a puzzle being torn to shreds. But Captain Morgan wasn't finished. She had one more weapon at her disposal, a weapon of fear. Valkyrie's AI had calculated the perfect moment. The graviton pulse cannon was still in standby mode. This was a weapon designed to exploit the Karnak's weakness. It created a pulse of gravitational energy that distorted space around it. It was capable of tearing through shields and creating a gravitational singularity, a black hole, if only for a few seconds. The Karnak had never faced something like this before. Captain Morgan's hand hovered over the button. She felt the weight of the decision in her chest. This wasn't just a weapon, it was a statement. A message. She pressed the button. The ship's entire frame seemed to vibrate as the graviton pulse fired. A massive shockwave of energy erupted from the Valkyrie, expanding outwards and twisting the very fabric of space. The nearest Karnak ships that were caught in its wake were sucked in, their shields disintegrating like paper in fire. The distortion grew, pulling everything in until the ships were crushed under the immense pressure, imploding into nothingness. The remaining Karnak ships fled. They had seen enough. What they had faced was no longer just an enemy. It was a nightmare. Valkyrie stood alone in the void, silent, its mission complete. The Karnak were retreating, their fleet decimated. The fight for Earth, which had seemed like a losing battle only hours before, was now over. Captain Morgan sat back in her chair, her chest rising and falling with calm breaths. She hadn't won the battle by luck. She had won because she believed in humanity. She had won because humanity never gave up, even when the odds were impossible. And now, the Karnak knew that. Athena's voice broke the silence once more. "Enemy retreating, Captain. Mission complete. Earth is safe." For a moment, Captain Morgan didn't speak. She just stared at the stars outside the window, watching the distant remnants of the Karnak fleet disappear into the darkness. It was over. But the war, humanity's war, had only just begun. Captain Morgan stared at the empty space in front of her. The Karnak fleet was gone, but their shadow remained. Valkyrie had succeeded, but victory didn't feel like a win. It felt like the calm before the storm. The galaxy was vast, and the Karnak were just one of many threats humanity could face. But for now, Earth was safe. She turned away from the viewport and walked toward the command center. Her crew was quiet, exhausted but alert. They had fought hard, each one a cog in the machine that had taken down an enemy fleet 10 times its size. But despite the success, there was an unspoken understanding between them. They knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. "Captain," Athena's voice cut through her thoughts. "A new signal incoming. Unidentified. Morgan stopped, her eyes narrowing. She had expected the Xarnock to retreat, but a new signal. What now? Patch it through, she ordered, walking toward the communication station. The screen flickered for a moment. Then a strange, unfamiliar image appeared. It wasn't an enemy fleet. It wasn't a warning. It was a symbol, a mark, one she had never seen before. It was ancient-looking, etched into the dark void like a constellation of some forgotten race. The image shifted, and a voice boomed from the speakers. It wasn't like anything they had encountered before. It was deep, almost echoing through the ship. Human, you have done something the galaxy has not seen. You have defeated the Xarnock, a race that has conquered countless worlds. Captain Morgan's fingers curled into fists. She couldn't see the figure speaking, only its voice. But something about the tone sent a chill down her spine. This wasn't just any ordinary race. Whoever this was, they knew of the Xarnock, and they knew humanity's victory wasn't by chance. But your victory will not go unnoticed. We are the Falon, the Watchers. And you, Captain Morgan, have caught our attention. The name sent a ripple of confusion through the bridge. Falon, a race of mysterious entities that had existed in the galaxy long before the Xarnock, or even humanity, had risen. Legends spoke of their vast knowledge, their ability to see across galaxies, to watch entire civilizations, and manipulate events from the shadows. But no one had ever seen them, not truly. They were myths. The voice continued, carrying a weight that seemed to press down on Captain Morgan's chest. We have been watching humanity for some time. Your ability to fight, to survive, has been impressive. But now, the Xarnock are only one enemy. You will face many others, ones far older and far more dangerous. We offer you a choice, Captain Morgan. The crew around her tensed, and she could feel their eyes on her. This was no ordinary threat. It was an invitation. Join us. Become part of something greater. We will guide you, teach you the ways of the ancient warriors. You will have the power to defend your people, not just from the Xarnock, but from all who would threaten your world. All you have to do is accept. Captain Morgan's thoughts raced. The Falon were not a race to be taken lightly. They didn't offer things without cost. What did they want? Power? Knowledge? Or was there something more insidious at play? Her mind raced back to the battle, to the destruction of the Xarnock fleet, to the calm within Valkyrie as they'd fought back the invaders. They hadn't just relied on weapons. They had relied on their minds, their hearts, and their determination. But joining the Falon, could they offer something humanity couldn't achieve on its own? Or would they strip them of everything they fought for, turning them into tools for an unknown agenda? Captain, Athena's voice brought her back. Shall I respond? Morgan looked around the bridge, meeting the eyes of her crew. They were all waiting, all silently wondering the same thing. Was this a blessing or a curse? Finally, Captain Morgan's voice broke the silence. Tell them we're not interested. Humanity stands on its own. We don't need to join their empire to survive. The voice from the screen responded, almost with a hint of amusement. We see. We thought you might answer this way. Very well, human. You have chosen your path. But know this, the Falon will continue to watch, and when the time comes, you will face trials beyond anything you've ever imagined. The screen flickered and then went black. Captain Morgan didn't move for a long moment. There was no relief in her heart, only the heavy weight of uncertainty. The Falon had watched them. They had seen their strength. And yet, they still left the door open for humanity to walk down a path that could lead to unimaginable power or unimaginable destruction. Captain, one of her crew members spoke up, his voice cautious. Do you think they'll come after us again? Morgan turned to face him, her expression unreadable. They won't need to, she replied, her voice firm. They've already decided we're worth watching. But it's up to us whether or not we walk the path they've set for us. There was no fear in her words, no hesitation. She had made a choice, and so had humanity. They would stand on their own. They would defend their world, their people, their freedom. As she walked toward the command center, her crew followed. The future was uncertain, yes, but they were human, and that meant they had something no other species could understand: the will to keep going. The stars outside seemed distant, cold, but for Captain Morgan and her crew, they had a whole galaxy to protect. And no ancient race, no matter how powerful, could take that away. The hum of Valkyrie's engines was the only sound that filled the quiet command center. Captain Morgan stood at the helm, her gaze fixed on the endless stars outside the window. The galaxy stretched out before her, vast and unknown. But now it felt less like a frontier and more like an arena, and she, her crew, and Earth were the new players in this cosmic game. The message from the Valon still echoed in her mind, like a dark promise. They had been watched. Everything humanity had done, every decision they had made, had been observed by a race far older, far more powerful than anything humanity had ever faced. It was unnerving, but it was also a reminder. The universe was not a place for the faint of heart. It was a place where power, influence, and survival were determined not by strength alone, but by those who could adapt and endure. She turned to face the rest of the crew. There was a tension in the air now, a silent understanding that the battles they had won were nothing more than the first skirmishes in a war that could span the stars. The Tarnak were defeated, yes, but they had been only a symptom of a far larger threat. "Captain," Lieutenant Harris spoke up, breaking the silence. "The Falon." He hesitated, clearly weighing his words. "What do you think they really want from us?" Morgan didn't answer immediately. She stepped over to the console, staring at the faint trail of light that indicated their current position. Earth was still far away, and the journey would take time. But the thought of returning to normal life seemed distant now. It felt like they were on the precipice of something far greater and more dangerous. "I don't know," Morgan finally said, her voice low. "But we'll have to be ready for whatever comes next. The Falon, they're watching us for a reason. And if they wanted to destroy us, they would have done it already. That means they have something else in mind." She turned and faced the crew, her eyes scanning the room. Each person, from the engineers to the communications officers, had played their part in the defeat of the Tarnak. They were battle-tested, but Morgan knew that the fight they had just won was nothing compared to what lay ahead. "I've been thinking about what they said," Morgan continued. "They offered us a choice, a chance to join them, to learn from them. I know it's tempting, but we can't just give in to that kind of power without understanding what it means." There was a quiet murmur among the crew. They had all heard the same offer: power, knowledge, the chance to stand beside beings who had witnessed the rise and fall of entire civilizations. But they all knew the price of such power could be far more than they were willing to pay. "Captain," Harris spoke again, "if we reject them, what happens next? Do we just wait for them to come back and try to force us into their empire?" Morgan shook her head, her jaw set with determination. "We don't wait for them to make the next move. We make our own. Humanity doesn't kneel to anyone, not now, not ever. But that doesn't mean we go into this blindly. We need to prepare. We need to learn, and most importantly, we need to stay united." A sense of resolve filled the room. They had already defied the odds once. Against all expectations, humanity had shown that it could stand on its own, that it had the strength to fight back against overwhelming forces. The Tarnak were gone, but the galaxy was full of threats that would require more than just the Valkyrie and its crew. "We need to start gathering allies," Morgan said, her voice strong. "The Tarnak were only one enemy. The Valom are watching, but they're not the only ones. There are others out there, other races that might want to see humanity rise or fall. And if we're going to survive, we'll need to find those who will stand with us." The crew nodded in agreement. Harris spoke up again, his tone more cautious now. "Captain, Do you think it's possible to unite the galaxy? The Karnak were a brutal force, but they were one of many. Can we convince others to join us in our fight? Morgan's lips curled into a thin smile. I don't know if we can unite the entire galaxy, but I believe humanity can inspire others. We've already shown that we can survive, even thrive, under impossible odds. There are those who will see that and want to join us, and there are those who will want to stop us. She turned back to the console, her mind already working. The Valkyrie couldn't be the only ship out there. Earth wasn't alone. There were other planets, other species who might be facing the same threats the humans had. If they could reach out, if they could find the right allies, humanity could forge an alliance powerful enough to resist the Fallen and any other force that came their way. Let's start looking beyond the stars, Morgan said. We'll begin by sending out scouts. There are distant colonies, mining stations, and outposts scattered across the galaxy. If we can contact them, we can start building a network of support. The idea of building an interstellar alliance was daunting, but it was the only way forward. Humanity needed to be ready for anything, and that meant forging alliances where they could, gathering intelligence, and expanding their reach. The ship's comms beeped, signaling a new transmission. The voice on the other end was familiar. Athena. Captain, I've received a response from the first colony. They've acknowledged our signal and are willing to meet. Morgan felt a surge of hope. It was a small step, but it was a step in the right direction. Great. Set course. We'll make contact and see where it leads. The crew began moving with purpose, preparing for the next leg of their journey. Earth had been saved, but now it was time to prepare for the next phase, the galaxy-wide fight for humanity's future. As Valkyrie sailed toward the distant colony, Captain Morgan stood by the window again, her eyes tracing the stars ahead. The universe was vast, but humanity had learned something vital. They were stronger than they had ever known. They had defeated the Karnak, defied the expectations of the Fallen, and now they had a new mission: to survive, to protect, and to unite. The galaxy was waiting for them, and they were ready. Captain Morgan stood on the bridge of Valkyrie, gazing at the swirling stars in front of her. They were nearing the colony, one of the farthest reaches of humanity's expansion. It was an outpost on the edge of known space, a small, self-sustaining world. Few ships ever ventured out this far, and the risks were high. But in a galaxy full of uncertainty, every alley counted. The crew was busy at their stations, preparing for the meeting. Tension filled the air. A colony that had been isolated for so long was a fragile thread in the galaxy's vast tapestry. They had no idea what to expect. Would they welcome humanity with open arms, or would they view them with suspicion? Captain, Lieutenant Harris called, breaking her reverie. We're entering the colony's orbit, preparing to establish communication. Morgan straightened, a surge of anticipation running through her. The first contact with an independent colony since the war. This could be the start of something monumental, or a disaster. They wouldn't know until they made the first move. Patch them through, Morgan said, her voice steady, but carrying a weight of unspoken thoughts. The screen flickered to life, revealing a woman in her mid-30s, her hair pulled back into a tight bun. She wore the uniform of the colony's defense force, her expression cautious but professional. Her eyes flicked over the crew, then settled on Morgan. "This is Captain Morgan of the Earth ship Valkyrie," Morgan said, trying to project calm. "We're here to discuss potential alliances with your colony. We've come in peace." The woman on the screen didn't immediately respond. She tilted her head slightly, as if weighing the captain's words. After a long moment, she spoke, her voice cool but not unfriendly. "Captain Morgan, I'm Commander Alia Dvorak of the outlying colony of Targan. We've received your signal, but we've been independent for years, and we've learned to survive without interference from the rest of the galaxy. Why should we trust you now? What makes your Earth so different?" Morgan's heart pounded. This was the moment of truth. The first test of humanity's ability to forge alliances with those who had never been part of the larger galactic community. She couldn't afford to stumble. "We fought the Tarnuk," Morgan replied, her voice unwavering. "We stood alone against a fleet of their size. Earth is a world that knows how to fight, how to survive. But we also know the importance of unity. The galaxy is changing, and we believe it's time to stop fighting alone. We want to build a network of allies, a coalition of independent worlds. Together, we stand a better chance against the threats that are out there." Dvorak's expression remained neutral, but her eyes narrowed slightly. "You think you can unite the galaxy? Even the Tarnuk couldn't do that. What makes you believe this coalition will survive when others will only see it as a threat to their power?" Captain Morgan met her gaze, unflinching. "We don't expect the entire galaxy to join us, Commander. But we do believe there are enough who share our goals: survival, protection, and the desire to keep our worlds free from the kind of tyranny that Tarnuk wanted to impose. Our offer is simple: join us, or stay independent. We'll protect you either way, but together, we'll be stronger." Dvorak studied her for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Finally, she spoke again, her voice softer. "I'll give you a chance, Captain. But know this, our colony is not just any outpost. We've made enemies in the past, enemies who won't hesitate to strike first. I'll arrange for you to meet with our council. If you can prove your worth, we might consider your offer." Morgan felt a breath she hadn't realized she was holding release from her chest. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either. It was a start. "Thank you, Commander," Morgan said, her tone sincere. "We'll be ready." The screen blinked out, and the crew let out a collective breath. Morgan turned to them, a sense of resolve filling her. This was just the beginning, but it was a significant step. They had made contact. They had been heard. "Get ready for the council meeting," she ordered. "I want everyone prepared. This could be the first of many." Hours later, they entered the Targan colony's capital, a sprawling city built into the planet's natural landscape. The buildings were a mix of rugged stone and advanced tech, the result of years of self-sufficiency and ingenuity. They had clearly adapted to their harsh environment, and it showed in their strength. Captain Morgan and her senior officers were escorted to the council chambers, where a group of representatives from various sectors of the colony were already waiting. The room was stark, functional, with a long metallic table at its center. Around it sat 5 individuals, each dressed in practical uniforms. "Captain Morgan," one of them said as she entered. He was a tall man, his face hard and lined with age. "I'm Governor Trent. We've heard your proposal, but you'll need to understand that we've been alone for a long time. We don't easily trust outsiders." "I understand," Morgan replied, taking her place at the table. "Trust takes time, but I'm here to prove that humanity can be trusted. We have a lot to offer, and we're willing to fight for your survival as we fight for our own." Governor Trent studied her for a moment before nodding. "It's not just about survival, Captain. It's about autonomy, about our people's right to decide our future without the interference of any outside forces." Morgan met his gaze, her eyes firm. "That's exactly why I'm here, to offer you that choice. No one will dictate your future, but together we can ensure that your autonomy remains intact, that your people remain freed from the threats that plague this galaxy." The discussion was long, the council's skepticism evident in every word, every question. But Morgan stood her ground. She spoke of the Tarnuk, of the Falon, of the galactic power struggles that were already beginning to unfold. She spoke of the strength that came from unity, not domination. At the end of the meeting, Governor Trent rose to his feet. "We'll consider your offer, Captain, but this is just the beginning. You'll have to prove that you can protect us from the dangers you speak of. If you can do that, we'll talk about what comes next." Morgan stood as well, her heart racing. It wasn't a full commitment, but it was a step. The first crack in the wall. "We'll prove it," she said, a quiet confidence in her voice. We'll show you that humanity keeps its promises." As she walked out of the council chambers, she couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph. This was only the beginning. There would be more colonies to meet, more obstacles to overcome. But with each new ally, humanity's future grew a little brighter. And as Valkyrie lifted off from Targan's surface, Captain Morgan looked out once more at the stars. The galaxy was vast, filled with unknowns and dangers, but humanity had already made its mark. They had shown that they were more than just survivors. They were a force to be reckoned with. The journey was far from over. But now, they had a chance, and they would take it.